right, welcome Executive Committee. Today is Tuesday, August the 13th, and I detect a quorum of our committee chairs, as well as Madam Pro Tem. So thank you all for being here today. It's been a minute. I think last we met was kind of late spring pre-budget, so I appreciate your patience in what is a busy season. So again, a special thank you to Chair Porterfield and Vice Chair Toombs and their committee for all their hard work back in May. So I know that was a big undertaking for the body, but a lot of great feedback. So a special thank you to you, Chair. Okay, so Vice mayoral updates and council office updates may kind of merge into each other just a little bit, but I did want to bring y'all's attention to, among the handouts that you have, Maria Calder sent to the council in mid-July an update about travel. And I know that's, something that historically has been placed in your binders at the start of a term, and staff is always glad and to kind of help you all with that. But I think we were hearing kind of some common confusions, I think a little bit around per diem rate and what the meaning of that was. And so this was intended to be a clarifying communication for council members to just sort of break everything down as far as the process. And so our travel allotment, and I'd like to think of it as well, colleagues, as, travel and education, right? And so the approved travel is on the back. Always happy to take under advisement things that we think are helpful to the policy work that we do. But that was emailed to the body and then shared with the body on the desk, and then it lives where now? Also online, potentially in our council office SharePoint, or does it not yet?
It lives online for us. I can figure out how to put it onto a SharePoint. It may be under the, if it's not already, it could go under the orientation section for those materials.
Right.
And the original material would be under that section also.
And I think we're working as well as far as kind of SharePoint and resources, which I'll be speaking to have things like this that, so they don't just kind of live in your inbox and then you got it on your desk, but there's kind of place to go, kind of ready reference where to look for these things. So as always, in your leadership roles, when we send out something like this, if you have some feedback and you think any additional clarification is needed, but I really do appreciate Maria Calder for working with me to pull all this together. So I just wanted to bring your attention to that. Next kind of trip that the council office does a little extra level of organization for in a hope and effort to get members to attend National League of Cities with all the good things that we can learn there. Ms. Hayes, do you have an update of how many members are going to be joining us
we have
so far?
16 so far, counting yourself. And then there was something that's come up. I've been on the phone all day with NLC, but Saturday night is usually the closing night, and it's going to be moved to Friday night.
Okay.
And they're going to have a centennial experience on Saturday night for you to participate, but it's $100 extra. So if you want to do that, let me know, and I'm going to send out an email to update the ones that have already registered, because that's going to be, they talk like it's maybe a red carpet kind of an event. So it's going to be pretty fancy. So if you want to participate in that, that's optional.
That's good to know. I appreciate that. We're there to learn and be nerds and do policy stuff, but it's good to spend time together too. So I'm glad to hear that we've got 16 folks signed up for that. We tried as well this year, and I appreciate Ms. Hayes very much, to put everything in one email, so that's just everything about NLC, so you can flag that and go back to it. But if you are signed up to do that, and you need to be back in touch with Ms. Hayes as to your flight arrangements, right, and any of the special things that you want to sign up for, but she is gonna kindly coordinate hotel and prepay that so that members can be coordinated and staying together. So, okay, so that's everything from a travel perspective by way of updates. Does anybody have any questions about NLC or travel? Chair Swoboda, go ahead.
Flights.
Yes.
It has been stated that we purchase our flight and then we get reimbursed. That's a heavy lift for some of us. It just comes between like paying bills and purchasing the flights. We can't front that cost up front. Can we move that to it going through the council office again?
So I have taken that concern under advisement, and I think what I would prefer to do, rather than kind of wide open to 40 folks for the office to administer, is that if that is a concern for you, just to be in touch with me, and I think we can consider if we can make an exception in that regard. I think it's a valid concern, given the cost of the flight and so forth. So I think now that everybody is getting sort of set up with their short vendor and ACH form, and we're kind of tightening that turnaround for reimbursement, I hope, because we're tightening that window, that can happen within sort of a credit card cycle. But I also recognize sometimes at a certain value, the level of credit somebody might have to be able to even purchase the ticket is a challenge. So I respect and appreciate that, and I think we'll just take that on a case-by-case basis. But I do appreciate you elevating it. Yeah, Chair Porterfield, go ahead.
I just wanted to also flag that and highlight that. I think, I know when I first got on council, I guess 2019, when we were having these conversations about making sure that this money was allocated, like a big part of that conversation was to ensure equity. And the thought was that, some people have funds to be able to travel, other people don't. And what we learn on these trips we're able to use that for the betterment of our districts, our community. So we want to make sure that we remove like any barriers. And, not everyone has a credit card, not everyone has an available balance. People are just in different financial stages. So I just wanted to highlight that as well. That's feedback that I have also heard when people were asking me about the allocation, the travel allocation for our budget year. That was something that was flagged for me also, that people were kind of struggling in some instances and were looking for a way for the council office to be able to pay something as opposed to a reimbursement. Even if it's a short window reimbursement, sometimes people just don't have it.
Right, yeah, and so it's sort of that window of reimbursement. So just so everybody's kind of clear for the listening public, there is, allotted funds for the council to engage certain opportunities, conventions that are around the policy work that we do. Sometimes those are here, sometimes they are online, sometimes they do require flying, and we all do our best, right, to fly Southwest at the budgeted earliest possible rate to do that. But I do appreciate that can be a challenge for members here or there, and I think those still from an administrative perspective, rather than just sort of opening that up, and some of the challenges sometimes when a flight is canceled and the reimbursement, like it just presents a unique set of challenges. So I think that's why it's probably better on a case-by-case basis, but I welcome any member to be in touch with me so we can support them in that regard. So yes, Mr. Bradford.
My question is a follow-up on this. How other departments, do they book the travel themselves? And kind of another question is, would it be beneficial possibly if Metro as an entity could work with some travel, like airlines or hotels or whatnot, so that if stuff is booked through the council office, maybe there's some potential savings by getting a group rate, or an employer discount.
From a vendor perspective, yeah. Margaret, do you want to speak to that as far as any of the kind of challenges?
We can look into whether there's group rates available for something like NLC. I know that in the past, we used to be able to do that, but then, with changing times and security issues, sometimes that is a lot more difficult to accomplish. But we can certainly look to see if there's anything out there, if any other departments do that. I just from my personal experience, I don't think that is the case.
Okay, I appreciate that. And we are, to the full extent possible, we are garnering group discount rates for NLC. We are garnering group hotel rates. I mean, that's why we set the threshold and ask members so that, these are taxpayer dollars and so that we are good stewards of them. But I do think over time, because, when we first went to NLC in my first term, Rosie kindly, purchased a whole batch of tickets at that group rate, right? And it was done differently at that time. But I do think that's good for Metro to hear. But I think we're also somewhat unique in our size sometimes, right? So the fact that we have 16 people going somewhere versus, an individual person from a department might be going to a convention and how they administer that. But it is worth asking, I think, kind of on the Metro accounting side of things.
We can certainly inquire.
Yep, okay.
And not just with the hotels, I know, my day job, sometimes I can get discounts on airfare. So again, that's still looking at ways we can save taxpayer dollars by.
A group rate, though, you have to travel the same time, the same
Yes.
place with everybody. And that's what, I used to do that, and we would have 25 people go. It's pretty, we could accommodate that, but now we've got somebody maybe leaving at 8:30, one leaving at 10, and so the timing, we all have to go out the same time and come back the same time to get that group. And it's not much more of a difference than if you can get a good Southwest price. I mean, what I have found, but I'm open to looking into that as well. But that's the challenge, is everybody has to go the same time, come back the same time.
Right, which can be somewhat constraining depending on,
People's
a member might
schedules,
look at the program for NLC and think, oh, all these things I want to attend are on the first 2 days, or I have another commitment that I need to come back home.
Right.
And then by coming back home earlier, we are then saving money because that's one less day for us to stay at the hotel. And so my impression from talking to Margaret and Rosie is it's kind of been a wash somewhat. But go ahead, Ms. Birdfield. And we'll
Just
move on.
one other thing to share. Director Darby, since you were saying that you were talking to, I guess, accounting, one thing we could lift up too, there is a program called Travel Perk, and we may want to look to see if that's something that we could use. It's basically corporate booking. So you would have a Travel Perk account. So me as a council member, I can log in, I can look at the flights, and I can say, this is the flight that would work for me, and then you all would still have to approve it, and then it would be charged to that credit card or whatever. So the members are not having to pay up front, and we're also not having to put the work on anyone else to find flights or anything like that, and it would still have to be approved. So that might be something that we could to
Like a platform.
explore to see if that platform will work for what we need.
Happy to look into that.
Okay, great. Also,
One last question on the.
last question on travel.
On the approved ones, I just wondering, because I get the emails all the time from Tennessee Municipal League, but historically, has anyone from Metro Council ever attended TML events?
We do try to do that, and we're trying to do that increasingly. It is not listed here, but that is approved, and I would approve that. I myself, Mr. Rutherford, and Ms. Hancock attended a convening. It was literally here at the Radisson, but I think there was a low registration fee. We pulled that from those funds, right? It's kind of booked from a Metro perspective as travel, but it's also, if we were to drive to Knoxville to participate in a Tennessee Municipal League, then you have your, your
Mileage, hotel.
your mileage, et cetera, and so it is travel, but also, yes, so Tennessee Municipal League, I concur with you. It's something I think as a body we want to be much more specifically engaged in from a relationship building standpoint. Yes, let's please add that to this list, because I know we've done that over the years, and that may have just sort of fallen out. So I do appreciate you reminding me about that. Okay. Just a brief update from Ms. Vo, who kindly is kind of a almost sunshine committee of one. I think Ms. Stiles assists her somewhat as well, but members were kind, and this executive committee okayed inviting our colleagues to kind of chip in. So for bereavement, birthdays, and so some of those expenses over the year have been for Ms. Gadd's partner in the hospital with surgery, Ms. Hancock's father who passed. The obituary indicated a certain foundation. We did that, and so again, that is with council members' own money, but just sort of coordinated through the office. So we do have an accounting of that, and appreciate Ms. Vo coordinating that, and then she sends that to Maria in our office just to kind of cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure that's all being spent appropriately. From a transition perspective, expenditure budget-wise, also in the kind of chipping in space, when we started this year, we did not have budgeted funds for food on council evenings. And so that was coming from members. We have effectuated that into the budget. And so I feel strongly about that. Nobody does good work when they're hangry. And committees start at 3 and 3:30. 40 people cannot put their own personal dinner in one refrigerator. Like, it's just, so I appreciate that we have started now. I think we've done one meeting with that. And so if there are any kind of questions about that or feedback on that, as far as dinner, I would welcome that at this time. Does anybody have anything they want to share or inquire about?
More of an inquiry / idea. I know a lot of times it's usually whatever's open closest to the building. But since we know we have these funds, we know, council nights are pre-planned, how much of a logistical nightmare would it be to maybe look at having restaurants from our districts, like pick a different district, like, well, tonight's dinner is from this place located in District 1 or District 25, so that we can kind of highlight our districts.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think there's a fair amount of feedback that members were like, okay, we don't want to eat pizza anymore, right? Everybody's kind of tired of pizza. But Margaret, can you take that question from Chair Bradford?
Right now, just with the funds that we have allocated for meals, we are looking to places that have delivery to this office space, so that we are not sending council staff, spending council staff time and dollars and resources to go out and pick up meals. So we are also constrained by the dollar figure. So if the place doesn't deliver after, we need things delivered here by 6 p.m., that's the plan, to have it delivered by 6. So if they can't deliver by 6, then they're kind of off the list. And then the dollar figure I think we're looking at per meal is $300, I think is what we've allocated for, is the cap for the first meeting of the month. The second meeting of the month, the first meeting of the month, because of the public comment period, usually runs a little bit longer. Public hearings. And the second meeting of the month, we will regularly have kind of snacks available in the kitchen, so it's just kind of a tide you over until later, and hopefully with the new condensed consent calendar and that consent agenda, we can get out of here a little bit earlier the second meetings of the month. So those will be more like granola bars and snacks in the kitchen for you. So if there are locations that you want to propose that we will get a quote from, we can do that. But again, they need to offer delivery as well. So, and it's what we're looking at primarily is delivery time and our capped amount, because we don't have
And
unlimited funds.
frankly, to your point, if we can get them within the confines of the budget and the time, the delivery fee, I think it's worth a shout out dinner tonight for the council has been provided by. It's a marketing opportunity for them. I don't know if we can do it.
Ms. Darby's like, no, yeah, it's
Stretching it here.
I don't know if we I can see Margaret's face.
back in the day, apparently, departments provided the, lobbyist entity, nope, we are not doing that. That's why I think it's important that it's just in the budget. People need to eat to do good work. I think it is fair to consider how we can elevate small business in our districts. I think we all, as elected officials, want to support small business, but we need to make sure that that's evenly kind of diffused across the county, that we're not being preferential to any one business or the other. That creates kind of a level of complexity too. We're trying it and it's new, and so I think I will just continue to work with Ms. Darby, but I will relay that I think many members have said that they would like to, if they can deliver and the cost is right, that, to support a small business would be their preference rather than say like a Publix or something like that. That is some feedback that I received from members. Go ahead.
So
Here's Sepulveda.
are your comments, would that apply to Councilmember Bradford's comments about highlighting different businesses in the district, or is that separate?
No, I think that's fair. I think we don't want to kind of cross over into like the marketing opportunity, but I think it's, you bought the food there, you put up a little table tent, this is who it's from, we paid for it, it's delivered, it's not contributed. We are supporting it through the budget, but I think it presents an opportunity to elevate us. So if there is a small business in your district that delivers and you find to provide economical food that is, meets a bunch of needs, I think we can send that to the office for consideration.
So just for clarification, district council members, say Councilmember Bradford has some business, name a business.
Lost Patty.
Lost Patty, right? And they provide dinner that night. Councilmember Bradford can't go online and be like, we're eating Lost Patty tonight, highlighting District 13.
As long as Councilmember Bradford is clear that the dinner has been paid for, right? I think we just want to be careful to balance that, we are paying for our meals. We are being frugal and modest about that, and we appreciate the opportunity to support small business, but we don't want to get in a position of they're donating and contributing and we're elevating and whatever. In our own capacities as individuals, when we go out and eat and do and cut ribbons, we can boost those businesses, but I think kind of within the confines of our meeting and how we're appropriating the budget, I think we just need to be kind of a little more conservative in that regard, because I know there has been some concern from the office about even entering this space, right? And so I would just ask that we, be kind of go lightly and be kind of modest about it as we get started.
Okay, I guess my last comment on that would be, if we're gonna do something similar to that, thinking about specific months as well, like Women's History Month and
Right.
Hispanic Heritage Month. It's also another opportunity to highlight some of those businesses among our colleagues.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay.
And Madam
Yes.
Vice Mayor, I just wanted to also let us put it in context that we're talking $300 for 40 people, so that's $750 for dinner. So I don't know how many small businesses can also accommodate that, because we're asking them to take in a lot to be able to do that. So I just wanted to put that out there, that it's not all going to be, they're not going to make any money out of this in any way. So just wanted to put that out there. It's not a lot of money for $300 to come all the way from wherever you're coming to do all of that. But if somebody is willing and able to within what they do for that price and they can deliver.
Yeah. And I think we'll just sort of take it under advisement if we get going with this, get the feedback on the meals. I appreciate Ms. Darby finding the Publix that delivers.
Delivery is key.
Yeah, and yeah, so I appreciate everybody's feedback on that. And, you know, again, this is our first try at just budgeting that. So, okay, so moving on.
We have one more hand up.
Oh, I apologize. Ms. Porterfield, I'm so sorry,
It's okay,
Chair.
super brief. One thing that we could consider, and I don't think it's a hill worth dying on, but we could consider, we already have the schedule for who does the invocation. So the person who's doing the invocation could also just like make a recommendation, like if we're trying to make sure that other districts get, you get to like say a prayer and say, hey, you know, here's a couple of spots in my district that may be able to accommodate. So again, not worth dying on, but just throwing it out there, so.
Well, I think kind of striking the balance between variety and consistency, because for staff, you know, pizza's nearby. I absolutely appreciate everybody's like, oh my gosh, we, you know, don't have pizza all the time. But, you know, again, it being delivered, staff not having to administer that, when you have sort of a consistent order with a larger vendor that you can sort of change and insert some variety, it's like less work from staff. But if you can imagine district by district by district, every other time you've got to engage a new vendor and deal with delivery, it's problematic for staff, I think.
As a point of personal privilege, I used to have a job in a prior life where I ordered food for an office. That was one of my main jobs. And having a go-to place is key. A place that you can order to and know what you're going to get, that it's going to be good, it's going to be on time.
You can
like
count
it's
on them
hard
to
when there's
deliver it.
40 places,
Yes,
you know, because
right.
we don't know that it's going to come on time or if it's going to, you know, be suitable to sit out on the table for, you know, 4 hours.
Right, yeah. I appreciate, there's all kinds of concerns about, you know, stability of the food, you know, spiciness, neutral stuff,
Portion
whatever. So-
size, yeah.
Right, yeah, so,
So what I'm hearing is no sushi for dinner?
there will be no sushi for council dinner. Okay. Let's see, from a budgetary standpoint as well in the office, and then I think we're just gonna maybe kind of cross back and forth a little bit here between vice mayoral and council office updates. But I did want to bring members' attention to kind of, you know, making the office itself a kind of more functional space for you all to host meetings or to kind of, I think as Margaret refers to it, kind of hotel in, right? Making some of the cubicles, getting those kind of updated with new chairs and kind of having continuity across all of those. We do now have 3 whiteboards in the office, 2 of which are sort of vertical, smaller, 1 a larger lateral. So, you know, just for your own organizational purposes or facilitating a meeting, those are things that we have to kind of make the office work a little bit not better, but just to be helpful. We ordered a new projector, Ms. Hayes, because, you know, sometimes I know members of the community need to have a meeting in a place that doesn't necessarily have the screen or something like that. So we do have a travel rolling projector. Is there anything else, Ms. Hayes, to bring the recent purchase just
We
to
have a camera that we use for you guys to take pictures of you at different events and
Okay.
stuff like that. And we have a podium, acrylic
yes.
podium that we ordered
Yeah.
on rollers if you need that.
Okay, stanchions.
And, you know, we ordered 24 stanchions that we can line
Yes,
up the
thank
people
you.
in the hallway.
Yes, so I know members of the public will recall, and you all have seen that sometimes when we have a public hearing, staff does a good job of making do with hand sanitizers on posts and traffic cones and, you know, like crime scene tape, and it's not particularly welcoming. It works, and we cue everybody as we need, but we now have more kind of formal stanchions with the chains in between. So, you know, whiteboards, projector, camera, some stanchions, and some improvements coming to the office. Yes.
As far as the cubicle improvements, are the phones being connected as part of that?
So
Can staff speak
for
to that?
each one of the cubicles, it'll be an open cubicle, because some of them will have staff members in there, but for the open cubicles, we're gonna have the standard equipment at each one, so no matter
Okay.
which one you might want to like pop in and use one day, you'll have the same equipment and access at each
Okay,
one.
Yeah, because it has not a little bit like, does this phone work? Is this even a computer? You know,
It's not, they're not set up yet, but it's something that's.
It's in progress.
I see. Thank you.
Thank you. That's exciting.
Yes, okay. All right, so that's kind of on the supply front.
Just a quick question on that.
Yes, yeah.
Would we need to email the council office ahead of time to book one of those cubicles, or is just first come, first serve?
As of right now, I think it'll be first come, first serve. If we get to a point where you show up and you know, we're having too many people come in, then we'll start to go down that path. But right now, we've got 3, 4, 5, 6 cubicles plus, you know, conference rooms and the big training room in the middle where you can sit. The training room won't have the computer and phone equipment, but, you know, people come in and use that a lot.
And you can, with staff, reserve a conference room, one of the two, kind of large/small, and then upon reservation, like I'd like to have the large whiteboard in the conference room, you know, for this date at this time. Go ahead, Chair Sepulveda.
2 questions. I have in the past just gone on the calendar and reserved it myself. Would you prefer that we go through the office to reserve it, or is that okay?
I will defer to staff. What would be your preference?
Go through the office to do it, because that way we can put up, we've been putting up signs on the doors saying like, this is reserved at this time, so.
Got it.
You don't have to kick anybody out if you want
Okay,
that conference.
I've only done it twice. Second question, for Rules Committee, and I forgot to put this in my debrief, we've had bus passes that we give people an option
Yeah.
of taking instead of parking validation. And we only do it for Rules Committee from the committee standpoint, because we have people from outside coming to that committee, so it makes sense. But there are also people that come to public comment and public hearing, and is that something that we want to consider doing as well?
Yeah, I absolutely will take it under advisement. I think at our last meeting, or maybe even the one prior, I shared with you all our new sort of council office directions, like how do you get here? That's a document that you all can use for your guests, that we send to every invocation guest. But that does include, you know, transportation. We go central, it's 1 block away, and we're trying to kind of center that and encourage that. And I have appreciated seeing that in your committee and was kind of like, wait, where's that coming from? That's awesome. But we would need to kind of quantify what that would be, and kind of how that would work. If they would be sort of one-use quick tickets, how many we would need for that. I mean, I think what's a little bit awkward is, you know, for the parking garage, kind of, you know, infinite resource of multiple parking spaces, right? And you just say, here's your voucher, versus, you know, quick tickets, which have an inherent value for another use, right? So if you were to sit those out, that kind of becomes a different thing, where somebody picks up a whole stack of parking vouchers that allow you through the exit at the garage to be do that for free. If you sit out a bunch of quick tickets that are single use, somebody can walk off with that, and that's a value of $10, $15, $20. So while it might work in your committee to administer that by choice, would you prefer a parking validation or a WeGo, and you have kind of control over that short stack of things? That's not the case just sort of out in the open, and we can't necessarily assign staff to monitor that. But I think it's worth considering how could we effectuate that. So I guess I would just ask.
Or a partnership with WeGo, if someone takes, say that there's like, similar to the parking validation, there's another like quick ticket sort of item that they could just present to the bus drivers on that day to go back home.
Okay, yeah, okay. I will take it under consideration. Chair Porterfield, yep.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, I think I agree it would not be the highest and best use to assign staff to it, but I wonder if where we have those validation stickers, if we could just put a little note that says, like, if you are requiring or requesting a bus pass, please see a staff member, and then that way they can just get a bus pass for that particular meeting. Just a thought.
Okay. let's see, and Chair Sepulveda, I'm sorry, we were talking about the office, right? And then we segued over to that. Okay, so as it relates to the office, I do want to bring y'all's attention to, we're going to move kind of our resource library, such as it is, out of the kind of mystery carpeted wall, nobody can see it space, and put it out on the credenza that's kind of down near my office. Melanie has very kindly designed a little signage for that, and we'll put up some reminders around the office and share that. But we do have quite a few good books in there that I think will be helpful to people's policy work. Elise has kindly inventoried all those books. I've got some in my office too, so we have kind of shelf location. Melanie Cruz has very kindly migrated that into a format where we'll be able to check those books out, so you will get the reminder. Like Ms. Sepulveda, do you still have Human Transit at home? I can't remember. You've still got that book? Yes?
I thought I gave it back.
See, we don't know, because there's not a form to show.
I handed it back with former Councilmember Sledge's donations to the library.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and see, we've kind of just been on an awkward sign it out kind of a thing. This is why we're going to get a form, and so we can keep up with all the books that we have. And then as well, partnering with the libraries, we've sent them some of the books that we have in our collection, so kind of what's your city council reading, so to speak. And they as well, and I know Ms. Sepulveda will appreciate this because she is the Little Free Libraries champion. But I have also been in touch with libraries, not just about that sort of partnership, showcasing what we're reading, but as well some other partnerships that would kind of be in a similar vein to our Paws Across Metro initiative that we've done with MAC, featuring a council member, but working maybe on some regional partnerships, like, you know, the Donaldson Hermitage council members, or out in Southeast. And so I had a great meeting with libraries, Interim Director Luke and Andrea Fanta over there about just a whole host of partnership opportunities with libraries. So we've got that resource library that is for checkout, and Melanie getting that automated form, and that should be able to go live in just a few days. And then as well, want to thank staff, Margaret, Hannah, Brian Wilson, a long time in progress effort that I think kind of ties in with the transition memos that you have all been requested to provide. But we have legislative primers now. So things that I think we as former district council members know kind of always come up.
I love that.
Oh, yeah. Sherry's glowing over there.
That is my
You can't
thing.
see on the recording, but Ms. Weiner is glowing. So, you know, staff has done a whole lot of work on this. There's context, legislative history, all the associated ordinances, because I think as a body, I have found that we lose institutional memory, right? And so, you know, folks land here, 50% new members, they start getting stuff in their inbox, they get questions about the noise ordinance, and then it was like, okay, well, it used to be 7 to 9, but then it was 7 to 7, and why did we change that, and why did we move it over to this part of the code? And obviously, if any member has a question, staff, the great legislative service, like, they will provide those answers. So it's not, we're not saying to members, you have to study up on all the various legislative primers to understand this. You can obviously still ask staff, but if you have an area of policy interest or something that keeps coming up, I really think these are going to be a great resource. And before I call on you, Ms. Weiner, just to share. So noise ordinance is kind of 100% done in its final format. But we'll have noise ordinance, STRPs, short-term rentals, sidewalks, traffic calming, pets and animals, Ms. Weiner, trees, parking policy, sidewalk vending. And so I think those are some that we have engaged a lot as a body. Like, I mean, y'all, short-term rental policy, my goodness. I mean, like, I had a bill, everybody had a bill. We could, I mean, like, you just can't even kind of keep up with all the different iterations and state preemptions and new policies, and so we just want to get that kind of in one place. Sidewalk vending, the tabs are just not yet annotated, but this is kind of in progress, so I'll just share those to you as well. Ms. Weiner was first. Chair Weiner, go ahead.
Is this going to be available for us digitally as well? Like in SharePoint or somewhere?
We currently haven't put it in SharePoint. We've made the documents and the binders, and they'll be available for reading in the office. They're kind of like reference materials, not to be checked out, but we haven't made them available online. And
I think it'd be helpful, since so much of what we do is off-site, to have that opportunity to scan it in. It might be something to think about.
Yeah, I think, we're kind of just getting started with this. And I think, the resource library, as far as a classic library, that can be checked out, that can be taken home. We'll have the digital form, we can keep up with that. The ask on these will be over kind of in the legislative side of the house in the hallway, out by Mr. Wilson, Ms. Zeitlin, and Ms. Darby for just a sort of manual checkout, right? So you're here in the office, you're working, you want to go in the training area, conference room, and you want to kind of catch up on pets policy, you can do that. I think that's absolutely a fair ask. I would say, I know, Margaret, can you share, I know Marlene Fuller has been working in the clerk's office to kind of go back and digitize, but like our sort of pre-Legistar, like that exists in a place that's a little bit clunky to get to. A lot of that stuff is being scanned to be brought online to Legistar as far as some of those functionalities. So some of this legislative history, I mean, the sidewalk vending, or maybe it's even the pets and animals. I mean, it was back like old city of Nashville. The first pets animals policy was like pigs roaming at large, in like the 1800s or something. I mean, like, so it's.
Then we moved to goats.
Right, so it's
Dolly the goat.
it's pretty comprehensive, especially like for short-term rentals. I mean, the number of tabs in that binder to just sort of see iteratively how the legislation has changed. So I think we'd have to think about like what that looks like in digital form. And so, but I appreciate the ask, and then I think it, we'll kind of just get started. And I think my ask to you all would be, as chairs or any particular person who has worked on the noise ordinance or short-term rentals, trees, parking policy, sidewalk, those kind of things, just to, review the pets one and see if you've got any kind of feedback. But those will be going live here in the next few days. Yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Ms. Porterfield.
Thank you so much. This is freaking amazing. Like, this just made my little heart so happy. Thank y'all for the work on this.
And I will say special shout out to Brian Wilson.
Yes, absolutely, to Mr.
He's really the one
Wilson.
that's done the bulk of the work on this.
Yes.
Oh my gosh,
Vast
thank you.
majority.
Super helpful. My question is, and that was a very extensive list of topics. Thank you. I'm assuming that that's going to be emailed to the body with the instructions of how we're going to navigate that space. Will there also be space for us to make requests for future once we get everything up and running? Obviously, knowing that that's a big time commitment, so I'm not expecting a fast turnaround on it, but can we lift up some other topics?
I believe so. I think as we came into this council term, I think there were things that we knew to be pretty kind of fraught spaces, right, that had drawn a lot of policy interest. Sidewalks with the court ruling and so forth, the last kind of as filed tree bill, and so a lot of these are in a space that was kind of bridging over, I think, from last term, as kind of being complicated or fraught, but absolutely, I think, we'll need to think about and consult with the office, now that we've kind of got a stable of them that are, kind of based on recent policy interest or recent policy complexity, right? Like STRs, for example, right? There's a lot of stuff that's been happening in that space and it's been pretty complicated. Going forward, like sort of what does that look like? Like, could we deliver if requested by, is it a request by a singular member? Does that need to kind of filter through me? Is it one every 4 months? This has been a major, major effort on the part of staff, just kind of conceptually as just a new thing. So what we were trying to deliver here is things that, to be frank in meeting with everybody at the start of the term, and kind of what did they want to work on, what did they hear about, what's going on with sidewalks, what's happening with tree policy, I don't understand the traffic calming program, what about the noise ordinances? I mean, they really were just kind of honestly elevated through my kind of perceptions and inquiries of what people were interested in. To your point, Chair Porterfield, that does not mean it's in any way exhaustive. And so I think we will, once we debut this, want to think about, but I also don't want to kind of set the expectation that we're just going to be, kind of delivering these. So I think it's a fair ask, but yes, for the moment, let us pause and thank Mr. Wilson and get these all in place and just sort of absorb them to start. But I appreciate the request. Okay, so that, we talked about resource library, we talked about, oh yes, I apologize, Chair.
There's two questions.
Chair Sepulveda.
Going based off of the topics going forward, there's a few that I would be interested in having a binder for, like, some of us are going to be gone at some point, so making sure that that's around for a while.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know, I know that that's a big undertaking. I don't know where we're at on interns for the office. But I think this would definitely be something, if we have a law student or something that they could be doing some research on, that would move things along a little bit faster. There are several topics that maybe are important to me, but maybe the rest of the body isn't too interested in them. And I know that, like, we have to prioritize, but I do want to get to a point where we have it compiled. Like, when I leave at some point, I want to make sure that the worker legislation is all in one place.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And that is very much the goal here as we talk, and we'll kind of segue here shortly to our transition memos, but like retaining that institutional memory, right? Because what gets in the final policy of a bill that you might advance, there might have been other asks, other challenges, walls that you hit due to, field preemption at the state, and that sometimes informs or gets elevated. I know through these transition memos, what's something that's kind of a challenge or still needs to be worked on, or if you had a goal of 10 things, but you had to kind of narrow it down to the 5 most achievable given current stuff, and then, kind of where does that live? And so, I do think we're starting with these transition memos as it relates to chairmanship, but I certainly think any member, whether a chair or not, who's worked in a specific policy area, they can always kind of formalize that institutional memory. I think sometimes, like, my goodness, so like if I had not been re-elected, I still go 6 years back in my inbox. And I'm like, oh yeah, what were we talking about that time? There is such a wealth of knowledge in council member inboxes, and then due to term limits, boop, switch, flip, bye, email, gone. So I do want to make sure, not all the work that you all do as chairs or as members of this body is finally kind of translated into legislation, but you've done a lot of good work in research, and I want to make sure that has a place kind of to live. So, go ahead, Chair Bradford.
The thing I want to bring up is, you can come back to me later. I just want to, before we move on to committee chair transition memos, there's one more thing I want to talk about.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and we've got maybe 2 more things before we get to item 4 on the agenda. Let's see. So we talked about. Okay. From a kind of press standpoint, We still are kind of awaiting some draft kind of protocols, but we have started to, I think you all may have seen, 2 press releases around the ruling and then the filing of the appeal relative to the council size. So we were trying to get to kind of a better place of having kind of a tighter turnaround, check and double checking. We're going to add to the protocol. Melanie kindly creates the social media version of the press release subsequent to the release coming out. And this is 100% new for our office. So, the press list, such as it was, I think was maybe 30 people long, and half of them weren't valid addresses, but now we are coordinating with the mayor's office with their permission. We've added to that list. And so, that is going out in Gov delivery as well from a press relations standpoint. I appreciate many of you going on WKRN, which kindly has an opportunity for members the Tuesday midday. I think it's News 2 at midday before a council meeting. I know Chair Evans has gone to speak about some public health and safety things. Ms. Porterfield went to speak about the budget. Chair Porterfield. I am trying to diffuse those or spread those opportunities all across the body, kind of based on what's on the agenda, what's topical at the time. Eleanor Carter now administers that with WKRN, looks at the agenda, proposes 2 or 3 council members, because not necessarily everybody can do it, potential topics of discussion, and we're trying to get that, and she's maintaining a list on that and getting that sort of on a standard cadence as an opportunity for members. You all will be receiving also your daily news. I really do encourage you to look at that. That is anything that kind of intersects council work that is really topical and of the moment, kind of a hot button stuff. Sometimes you'll start to see like, why am I getting all this stuff in my inbox? Oh, there was a thing on the news last night about this, right? And so trying to kind of make members aware. Obviously, if you are ever on the news or are going to be quoted in a story, you can absolutely bring that to Eleanor Carter's attention for inclusion. Eleanor is also starting to maintain a calendar that has all the awareness months and weeks and things, that sometimes inform proclamations or resolutions or, the work that we might do, kind of incorporating that into the daily news. So that's kind of the update on the press front. I do want to thank Rosie, Eleanor, and Melanie as well. PIOs from the offices are now convening on Fridays, as I understand it. Always, not always, online a little bit to kind of.
I'm not sure I'm not. That's Eleanor.
Okay, just Eleanor's doing that, yeah.
Eleanor's meeting with PIOs, but then we meet with Metro National Network every Friday.
Right, okay,
Just to keep up with what's going on with all the stuff for the next week, so we can help y'all in what you do too. So.
Right. And I appreciate that, because what we were finding sometimes is, the Metro photographer was there at the request of the mayor. You look at the photos subsequent to an event, you might not even know that council members were there. We are trying to, for events that are departmental events, making sure that there is an RSVP, so we are aware of what members are going to be there. What is the run of show? Is there a shot list? We want to always make sure to get a group photo of council members. We're trying to be more intentional about that. And I want to thank Melanie especially for doing a whole lot of work in what is called the Canto platform, which is a Metro platform. You all over the years may have seen that's where all the mayor's photos were. But now with AI and hashtags and all those things, you can go in there and you can see Metro Council. The AI function is crazy. Melanie shared the anecdote that the AI could detect Ms. Allen from the backside of her head, right? Like didn't even have to be her.
So it does have
facial
Oh my
recognition,
gosh.
which you can go on the side. One, you can search through any specific item, so if you're searching for like a group shot or anything like that, you can search that, but it has all of your faces programmed into it, so if you're trying to find a specific picture of yourself for a news segment or a profile photo or anything like that, you can sort through and see all your pictures dating back till 2002.
Can you opt out?
I think you'll want to get in that platform and look at it. It's a secure platform as far as how we get in there. So it's all the events that the Metro photographers take in. If you have photos, and we'll be sending that to members soon, you can upload photos in there. Melanie is managing those, so whether it's library openings, events in your district, just looking for kind of images to share in your own newsletter and so forth. That's live, and we're going to share that with members soon. So appreciate all the work that went into that. Yes, Mr. Bradford.
Kind of on the same lines, there's been a couple times I've reached out via the council office to IT about there may have been a speech or something that I wanted to share on social media, and so I tried to get a clip from the broadcast. Well, the last time I've had issue, I keep having issues when I get the link from Metro IT, I click on it and it says I don't have permissions, and then I have to go back and forth trying to get permissions, and then when I try to share it to social media, again it pops up, says no permission. So is there an easier way we can go about, hey, Councilmember Evans had a fire speech the other night. I want to show that on Twitter. How can I get the, just that segment?
We have back of house editing software now, so if it was something like that, that's just send over the link to us with a specific timestamp that you want, and we can cut that out and send it back to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
And isn't, sorry, Madam.
Yeah, go ahead. Pretend.
On Register, do they attach the video to each bill so you can get that part of it as well, right? So if it's related to a bill, you can actually get all the conversation about the bill as a clip altogether.
Yeah, if you go onto the bill page, onto the history where it tells you, there's like a column per video.
But you can't download it, right? I think you can watch it. I don't know if you can actually
I think it's a link. I think it pops up in a window that you could use the link.
Okay.
You can screen record.
Yeah, I screen record.
That is a really good segue to the handout that you all have here about the ITS office hours. I think we may still be TBD on our final time. We need to confirm that we can.
I've asked them to create their.
Okay, I appreciate that, thank you. So members, this is just kind of a whole host of potential assistance, tutorials, facilitating, one among them, Mr. Bradford, might be, I was speaking or giving the indication I want to go into Metro YouTube and clip that. How do I do that? I think that's a fair ask. These are things that staff understands and ITS believes to be kind of interest to members. Welcome your feedback on this before this is kind of final. We've already sent this, I think, over to ITS for their preparation purposes. But if there is anything that you all see on here that you think needs to be added, I would welcome that. But the intent or the hope here is staff and ITS can always help you with something. Please don't hesitate to reach out to staff and say, I need help with this. I want to set up an inbox rule. As always, our staff is awesome and they were willing to help you with that. But I continue to be surprised by kind of the full Microsoft suite of planner, task list. You can pull this email into OneNote, which you can turn into task lists. I feel like we have a suite of things that can help us manage the overwhelming amount of email and tasks. I know we often as members really feel like we are drowning in our inboxes. And so my hope is that this affords us an opportunity. We saw in orientation, Mr. Durbin presented kind of a one sheet for everybody, but folks are busy. We'll kind of see how this goes. I will send an encouragement email, we'll have a follow-up. If members avail themselves of this opportunity, awesome. If they don't, okay, we'll try something different. This is not the be-all to end-all. You can always call and ask questions, but we thought this might be an interesting opportunity because, some people can work from, here's the list of how you do it, and some people, myself included, you kind of need somebody parallel there next to you to kind of help you get it done. So go ahead, Chair Porterfield.
Love this so much. Thank you for hosting this. Is there a possibility that we can get a second date for this, only because this is a council day? And I know like 3:30 to 5:30, like I cannot consume anything outside of like what's happening in public health and safety, what's happening in rules, and just trying to like navigate all the spaces that we're in during that. That's just like a hectic time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
I agree.
Yeah,
I couldn't agree more.
yeah. Pro Tem.
Yes, ma'am. And I wanted to ask, is it an in and out kind of thing? Is it where you just pop in and pop out as you need?
It's drop in.
It's not like you have to be there 3:30 to 5:30.
No, it is, it is open, it's like an open house. It's office hours. Josh Holloway on the Gov Delivery newsletter team, he's created a instructional video. We can send links to members, but if you want to just ask some questions about like, hey, my email list is gotten to the level that I have to actually pay for MailChimp now, and I would like to do a Gov Delivery. I mean, they can migrate your contacts over, they can set you up a newsletter. Yes, and Chair, I'll come to you, but Ms. Darby first, please.
I just wanted to add, the idea here was that these be quarterly, and we started out putting on a council day because people will be here, and it's a drop-in as needed. If you just have a really simple question, like I lost my email from such and such date, can you help me find it? Like they can do that. If you, to your point, have questions about anything on this list, that if something pops out to you, like, I'd like to learn how to do this or get help with this, and you can't do the office hours that day, ITS is available all the time for you. There's the dial-in number, so you can call them on the phone. And you can also email ITS Help Desk, and they will set up a ticket for you and reach out. And as council members, you basically have priority access to ITS whenever you need them. So this is just in addition to all of that, we thought it might be kind of nice if you had specific questions and you wanted someone to sit there next to you and help show you where to find the button to click on your computer.
So this is an in-person opportunity, but to Ms. Porterfield's point, I know that feeling of like, ooh, council evening kind of stressful, but you might be a Monday committee person, you might not have your committee till 5:30, this starts at 3:30, and you may want to just touch base, and you're like, oh, you know what, this is more complicated than I thought it was, then you know what, you can set up an appointment and address it later with them at more length, right? So it's just really intended to be kind of an open house of kind of all the opportunities, and we'll take feedback if folks felt like we're definitely not council night bad, noted, and we'll try to do it in a different way. But
I'm just bumping the time up a little bit, like a 2:00 start time or something could also be helpful.
Shifting it earlier. Yeah, I think it's kind of hard. Like you want to get in front of committees a little bit, but lap over. Yeah, because there are a lot of folks who have both their committees are Monday, right? And so that would be sort of a come early opportunity for them, and they wouldn't necessarily have that stress of committees. But yes, Chair Sepulveda.
Just a question for IT for like the app installation, and I'm only bringing it here because it might be helpful for everyone if this is the case. I don't know how many people have experience using Monday, or Asana is a similar software where you have a to-do list and you could track certain projects. I pay for my Monday, but it is my understanding that Microsoft provides Monday for free, and if it's for free as well on our Outlook itself, then that might be something that the council body can utilize as a whole, because it is expensive, but it's an easier way to track things. They have like all of these extra.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. I don't know if Microsoft owns Monday now, but there is I did not know either. I mean, there's the Microsoft Planner tool, and Planner coordinates with to-dos in your inbox, which are task lists, which can go to OneNote, Microsoft Planner is very similar to Monday. I'm familiar with that platform. But Melanie, can you speak to that?
So all of you have access to most of the Microsoft 365, like Office Suite, everything. So Planner, Project, lists, forms, everything you guys have access to. And Planner is closer to, I don't know if you guys have used Trello before. It's kind of that same system where you have little cards you can assign tasks to, like set due dates, notes, checklists, kind of for everything. So that might be something that you could look into. That's pretty similar, and it is free. You have unlimited access to that. So.
But I appreciate, I don't know if Monday's been pulled under the Microsoft umbrella. Microsoft can be a little confusing. It's like, it's tax list, it's to-do, it's planner, but wait, they're all the same thing. Like, I feel you, but I appreciate that. Yeah, kind of there are some planner functionalities in there. Okay, and lastly, on council office updates, we talked about the ITS office hours. Last we met, we were looking at sort of the menu of services, but also a unified email. And I do want to commend staff again, Melanie, Roseanne, everybody, because they have been demoing kind of in the background a unified email. And that does then work with this planner functionality, automated system. So basically, instead of like, oh, I need to ask Karina for this, or that's Rosie for that, or I need to go to Melanie for this, or who goes for that, or whatever, you're putting in that general request. I need help with this community meeting. I need this, I need that. It is automated as far as the reply and the task management. And so Melanie has very kindly pulled this together. We have not launched this yet. We're going to launch it in the next few days, and just wanted to kind of make you all aware and get any feedback and see if you had any questions about this. But staff has been kind of doing this in the background and troubleshooting it kind of for months now, right? To make sure that, you know, everything gets followed up on. It has auto reminders. You get a standard response. And so, I'm really grateful to staff for that. And I guess I would, Melanie's put together a really good summary here, but if you have any questions for staff about that, I would welcome that at this time. Anybody? Yes, Ms. Porterfield, go ahead.
Again, love this so much. Like, I love how y'all are streamlining so much stuff to make our jobs just a little bit simpler, like, 'cause it is insane, and thank y'all for this. So in essence, is this for everything except for legislation? So I see the example is I need assistance securing a location. So is this like non-urgent constituent services? Because I see it's like a 3-day period for completion. So is this in essence anything that's not urgent and anything that's not legislation, then would we kind of send it to this? Or is this specifically for like supporting with like scheduling meetings? I guess, like, what are the menu of services? Like, what are the things that are being offered?
This is everything but legislation.
Okay.
Literally everything can go to this email. Invariably, like, you don't kind of have to know all the things to ask. So say it's like, oh my gosh, I got to get that community meeting scheduled. There could be a follow-on. Your ask may be, I got to find a venue for this. Melanie will then respond with the form that says, ooh, hey, in addition, you need AV, you need this, you need an agenda, you need that, and you just go clickety, 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 and they're gonna get it all together for you. But Melanie, go ahead.
If I could just, the 3-day grace period is kind of more on our side, so it's, we will get spammed with an email saying you have an overdue task if something is not done within 3 days. Obviously, there are some things where we will manually change the due date because it's not due until that day. It's just a fallback in case by happenstance we don't happen to see the email, it gets shuffled somewhere else, we got distracted and weren't. If something happens on the 3rd day of that task, we will start getting spammed with emails saying you have an overdue task, and everyone in the group receives it, so we know that this takes kind of priority. This needs to get done today.
Yeah.
But if it's not going to take 3 days to complete everything that you send into there, it's kind of a first come first served basis, but you should still be receiving responses at the same rate you do now.
Okay. Thank you. This is awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, and then internal to staff, depending on, job, kind of roles, time available, like who's in the office, who's out of the office. Like, nothing's going to get dropped, right? Because if you sent it to, you need a proclamation that you sent to, Karina, but Karina's out of the office, and getting somebody, like, that's gonna be taken care of back of house, because then the automated system will know at that time that can't be delegated, right? And so, yeah. Was there a question over here? Okay.
I had something I wanted to add before we moved on, but she's got a question.
Chair Gamble, go ahead.
This is great. I have a question. Will this, I guess, will it operate like a regular email where we can submit attachments? For example, if I have a recommendation letter that I need to have put on letterhead, I can attach it. Okay, cool. That'd be great.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Porter.
I'm so glad you said that. Do we have like council letterhead? I kind of borrowed a letter that Council Lady Soror used and just changed it to my information. But do we have like a letterhead? Would I email this fancy address and ask for it? Okay, thank you.
Yes, every member has a formatted letterhead.
Okay.
So, I've seen a variety of things, especially from our chairs who are returning members. I saw a wide variety of letterheads. I was like, oh, Ms. Evans is using the old school, like, whatever. Mr. Bradford clearly had created his own, but now staff creates a standard letterhead for
Mine's from last
everybody.
term.
Right, and that's something like at office hours, like how to set that up as a template, so you can just drop your letters in, and that's sort of a default, all those kind of functionalities. So, yes, anything and everything can go to that email. Okay, last thing from me on the safety front. I did want to thank again Pro Tem Swara for her leadership on the dais during announcements when we had the GDL show up in chambers, and just make folks aware from a safety perspective. Ms. Darby, Ms. Hayes, and myself, we took part with the mayor's office, MNPD, sheriff's office, sort of just an after-action meeting, and say kind of like, okay, what happened? What are the resources that are in place now? What is within the purview of MNPD? What is within the purview of the sheriff's office? What safety things have been kind of put in place? Among the emails that you all have is just a kind of a reminder of a memo that I requested from Ms. Darby regarding kind of hateful communications. To whom do you send that? Threats, various things you get in your inbox. What is the protocol for that? Ms. Toombs elevated one today, and Lieutenant Dickerson was right on top of that. And so, that can be really stressful to a member when you get something in your inbox and you don't have to figure out, is this valid, not valid, is this a swatting incident, what is this? Just like who do you email it to? For what things? If you're getting a perpetual hateful auto spam, you can set up an inbox rule for that, right? And some of those things. So as it relates to communication specifically, you all have that memo that was sent to council. And then as to kind of physical safety, building, so forth, I shared with you the after action. Margaret, do you want to kind of speak to that and what will be somewhat of the sort of the product of that and the timeline for that? I know we're waiting from MNPD. We have requested some protocols around our sergeant at arms, and what are the expectations? When do we have one? When do we have two? What is within their responsibility? So that's kind of a segmented ask specific to MNPD and sergeant at arms. And Margaret, anything else you want to share on the safety front?
Yeah, one thing that we learned is that the contract for the security in this building is held by we knew this, but held by the sheriff's office. They monitor that. Well, the sheriff's office is going to be taking over security for the building. So in the coming months, you'll start to notice probably more sheriff's officers here. I think a lot of the folks that work with Allied will be coming on board with the sheriff's office, but it'll be, people in sheriff's uniforms down there. And so I think that's something that's important for us to know, and kind of when they, what kind of areas they will be overseeing. as far as meeting nights for council members, and they'll be, you know, in the parking garage, in that little box down there. There'll be someone down there.
Sheriff's office seal
Sheriff's
on
office, we're
there.
gonna ask them to put
Yeah.
a sheriff's office seal up. There have been more security cameras put up in the parking garage, and there's security cameras in the elevators and in the stairwells, and so, you know, you should feel pretty comfortable when you're coming out that, you know, security is monitoring those areas. You may not see a person, but they are monitoring those areas if something were to come up. And it's also my understanding that the police department is, in conjunction with the sheriff's office, they'll be putting together kind of an incident action report or plan. And just in case something happens during meetings, you know, what kind of actions do they take during the meeting? How do they handle people on the mezzanine, you know, that sort of thing. They'll be putting something together along those lines. We have not seen that yet, but that is also, you know, a safety document, so it won't be a public document.
Chair Sepulveda and then Pro Tem Suara.
What about the elevators that are in the quad? Because we have had incidents there, and then people are afraid as they leave as well. And even some council members, like, sometimes I go that way instead, or like, if we're taking the bus back home, then we walk out and go that way.
Yes. So cameras have been added to the elevators. We became aware of an incident in the elevators that come up from the garage into the public plaza. And I think several of us elevated that. Obviously, that's a particular challenge as a confined space. We want people feeling safe coming to our meetings. We want everybody who works in this building to be safe. I think there was some kind of wiring, effectuating, getting the camera into the elevator in partnership with garage management. But that is in place now and has been for quite a few weeks, I believe. And then there are the additional cameras internal to the garage, and you've seen maybe a little bit of a change when you kind of enter. Obviously, it's not a fortress, but it's been augmented by cameras. But yes, on the elevators, on the stairwells, yes. Did that answer all your questions?
And some of us take the bus to get here and to go back home, and we'll walk out.
Right back of James Robert in that way, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's any way, or like if there's someone out there sometimes. It's maybe we don't have that capacity, but I think some of us think about it here and there, especially like given that previous meeting, it would have been dangerous to like walk back.
What's the lighting like over there?
Like, I'll come out through the front steps and there's lighting there, but then we walk over here to get through the back, and that's been dangerous mainly because of cars, because I almost got hit because someone was turning right on red. And it was daytime during that point, but I almost got hit.
Just gonna put it out there, there should be no right on red
I
anywhere
agree.
downtown. Anywhere downtown, just downtown, don't everybody freak out, downtown. Okay. I apologize, Pro Tem was next, Ms. Suara, yes. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to say this to wrap everything before I get into the security. I wanted to echo what everyone has said on all the process and the procedure and all the streamlining. I know Ms. Hannah will be very grateful because she won't be getting 100 emails from me, so that's very good. On the security specifically, this is another great work and I'm very grateful to it. Ms. Darby, the one that I wanted to make sure that I point out that I think is important for most of us or people that are harassed online, one of the ones that have been a concern to me was that Supreme Court ruling. And so if I understand this correctly, we can block individuals even from our council social media platform.
Your,
new,
your
yes.
social media platforms are not official social media platforms of the government.
Okay.
And you have not been, expressly authorized to make statements on behalf of the government on your social media platforms. So yes, you can block people.
Thank you.
That's the link
Thank
for
you.
UFP case.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the memo speaks to that because that's sort of a newer interpretation.
That's a 180 from what we were advising before that Supreme Court case.
Right.
Yeah.
I know in my earlier service, even though it was my private account, I had been told, so I still have never blocked anyone. I've been very fortunate in that regard, but I absolutely appreciate the evolution of that and that, because I know members are enduring some really
Some you
hateful-
can leave, but some
hateful
really
stuff.
gets very hateful. And
I appreciate that, yeah, so that's in this memo here. This was sent to members, but Margaret, as I recall, I don't think this was also put on desks, and so it occurs to me
It
that
was
we.
emailed.
Yeah, it occurs to me,
For me.
we may want to do that as well. I know I'd love to save trees, but I've also heard a few members that they missed this. So, I don't know if we re-up it in the inbox or maybe we put it on desks, but, yeah, this was sent on July 18th, colleagues. So go ahead, Mr. Bradford.
So what I want to bring up fits perfectly, as we're talking about safety, and I've emailed. It came to my mind last term really when former Councilmember Mendez kind of stood up at one point in one of our meetings, kind of referenced the fact that had we been in chambers March of 2020, we probably would have been here when the tornado came through downtown. And there's been other things that kind of popped up, and I really want to know, some kind of training with council office and with council members, like what do we do in an emergency? If we're in chambers and something happens, where do we go? How do we evacuate? Also, I've attended a couple of first aid trainings, and I think it'd be, again, those who served last term with tornadoes and everything, I think it'd be a great asset for us as council members to have some kind of first aid, first responder training, so that if we're in a situation, we know what to do, and while we're waiting for first responders to show up.
And I couldn't agree more, because you never know when it's going to happen. I've had patients who have been in just for a hearing aid checkup and had a stroke in my chair, or had a heart attack, or I'm driving down Westmead, and I come up the hill, and Kathleen Murphy's mother's best friend is on the ground in complete cardiac arrest. And it was awful. But you just jump in, and they can teach you this, so it's automatic.
Well, and I would ask maybe from a training opportunity, Margaret or Rosie, if HR has maybe kind of a standard cadence of, kind of the Red Cross training, right? Like the AEDs, the Narcan,
And they're easy to use, so.
Yeah, I would want to maybe see what HR offers in that regard, if that's on any sort of standard Metro cadence that we can kind of plug into as the body and encourage that. I would say for this building in particular, there is probably no sturdier building in Nashville than this. Yes, so, God forbid a tornado, but I think,
During the 98 tornado, it came straight down Charlotte, right over here, and everybody in this building was fine.
right. But to your point, Mr.
Fire.
Bradford, if there were to be a fire, we're a large group of members, there's one door, do members in the back half of the chamber go out that way, members in the front half go out that way?
Do we have Hannah come down the hallway and go?
I'm next to the door.
Chandler's out
Fire,
the
you take
Safety officer.
There's fire.
Ms. Darby, can you speak to the fire safety
If there's-
concern?
For fire safety and for tornado safety and everything, you take the stairs. And we have, you all know there's stairs right next to the elevators. Don't take the elevators.
You'd probably be going out the front,
If there's
depending
a
on where the fire is.
if there's a fire, we could go out the front and walk out to the lawn and wait if there's a fire alarm. I know for tornado, I participated in a drill and you go down to the jury assembly room. That's where we went at least at that time.
Just don't go to the windows and watch.
Not good. There were people who were in 98 at the windows watching, perfectly fine.
Oh my gosh.
Sturdy building. Chair Evans,
I was
yes.
just gonna add, so after not the most recent tornado, but the tornado from last term, so I went through the hands-on Nashville disaster volunteer leader training. And so once you go through that training, then they also have a series of other trainings, and like they have the Stop the Bleed training coming up, and, so there are other opportunities outside of, I don't know if HR, if their hands-on Nashville relationship, that might be something, an avenue, a pathway that we could go down. Because of course, the whole thing about when you have a disaster in your district, you are likely to be involved in a situation that's uncertain. And of course, that some of those activities could carry over into kind of us being together in this building. But I'm always hopeful that there's gonna be somebody amongst all of us that'll know the details about go down these stairs, Aaron, that kind of thing. But to your point, there's probably a lot of opportunity for that.
We've had in the past training, like active shooter training and stuff, and we've had the fire department come in. It's a long sort of training, and they tried to condense it so y'all could participate in it. It's a good 2 hours, if not longer. And then we've had Red Cross come in and do some training too. So that's another option if y'all wanted to look at that.
Yeah, I think maybe just a menu of existing opportunities, whether metro or community, and just sort of, elevating those to members, again, just from a resource perspective. And then to the extent that we can encourage, go together in small groups or otherwise, but I appreciate you elevating that. Yes, Chair Porterfield.
I think at bare minimum, if we could just get a document that kind of outlines just a little bit. I mean, to your point, we should all know to take the stairs instead of the elevator, but in the moment that you're freaking out, you may accidentally run to the elevator, or you may forget that there are stairs right there, or whatever the case may be. So even if there was just something that was kind of outlining, if you are Evans and above, go out the front door. If you're Horton and below, go out the back door. Or if we have people in the chambers, all the council members are trying to come out of this door because all of the chambers are going out their door, or whatever. But just something, just giving a little bit of guidance, and just also notating where the stairs are leaving this floor, so that we'll know where to go. And then how do we get to the jury assembly room from the stairs in the event of a tornado? And is that just a tornado? Because fire, you get out the building. So I guess it's just tornado when we're using jury assembly room. But if we could just get a little guidance.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it took me maybe a few years to realize there was actually a stair over there across from that elevator. I took the elevator down and somebody came out the stair. I was like, what? I didn't know that there was a stairwell there. So yeah, that's fair point, situational awareness. I think, Margaret, and Rosie, we could probably dovetail that into the safety meeting that we attended, such that, okay, there's an evacuation or there's a fire, we might then incorporate that with the sergeant at arms. Sergeant at arms here says, okay, gallery, he knows to instruct people down and out the front door. A member of staff instructs this half of the room, you go out this way and go down this stair, right? I appreciate that. That is a fair request. Yes, ma'am, Chair Porter.
One more thing. Speaking of sergeant at arms, is there any guidance or protocol for individuals that are serving as the sergeant at arms? I'm assuming the sergeant at arms is the police officer that's sitting at the back of the room, but is there any protocol with regards to how they are engaging so that people aren't taking pictures of votes and things of that nature?
I will share with you, Chair Porterfield, that I had a conversation after last meeting and that's been addressed. Yeah,
Thank you.
That was not appropriate, so I appreciate that. But yes, that is, and I did sort of tie that into, I expressed appreciation for everybody who has served in that capacity, but sort of level setting on what the expectations are, because if you are spending a lot of time concentrating on taking a photo with your phone, you are not focused on the safety of the members and what might be happening along that rail. So I think that was a fair criticism, which they received and did apologize for, and that has been addressed. So
Thank you. It also makes it a little nerve-wracking for the members because I don't know now how to,
Yeah.
are you going to interact with me differently based on how I voted?
That officer will not be back in our chamber, so, okay.
Thanks.
All right, okay, we are now at our committee chair transition memos and updates. Obviously, you all have kindly provided to me your draft transition memos. The presumption of that being that, if you were not to be in chairmanship, aside from Chair Gamble, who is elected to a 2-year term, what would you want your successor to know? What is important, to Ms. Sepulveda's point earlier, for institutional memory? And so, I have received your drafts. I may be kind of circling back with you regarding some feedback and some questions. But that, as we do at every executive committee meeting, if there is anything in particular that you want to elevate for the awareness of your other colleagues at this time, aside from the memo or within the memo, I will afford everybody the opportunity. You don't have to make a report. You've provided your transition memo. But if there's something that you want to kind of share with everybody else, you are welcome to do so at this time for just a few minutes.
Would that include some of the recommendations we may have made? Do you want to take that up another time?
I think in the interest of time, you are certainly welcome to share anything that you would like to share at this time, but you don't have to feel like you have to read your whole transition memo right here kind of into the record, because I know it's in draft form at this juncture. But anything that's sort of in our operational space of how we're working or particular to the memos themselves or your chairmanship that you want to elevate at this time, you're welcome to do so. Chair Gamble, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, and I apologize, I haven't submitted my draft yet. I'm teaching a class at FISC this semester, and I was busy getting my lesson plans and everything for that, but I will get the draft to you before, this week, before the due date. But I would like to say that one of the things that I would like to work on for a second year in my term as chairmanship is to foster a culture of trust and collaboration within the planning committee. I feel like we maybe didn't get off on the right foot last year, so really wanting to work towards that and would really appreciate your help, Vice Mayor, in doing that.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have more recommendations in my memo, but I want to put that out there.
Chair Wiener,
One of the things that came to the charter revision is that there were people that either felt like they didn't have enough time to present us with some charter submissions, or didn't really think about it and then felt like there was this compressed time frame to think about all the things you might want to do with the charter. And additionally, there are some things in the charter, like referencing African American females versus females, and there are 6 locations in the charter that it's got to be fixed. And I feel like it makes sense for us to have a repository year-round, so that if somebody is dealing with something and they find a glitch or something untoward in the charter, I think it makes sense for us to have a place that we can say, you know what, let's pop this submitted or this recommended proposal in there so that the committee has a place to go. And when we present this to departments in January, or if we could actually even present it sooner and give them a location that they might present it that we can go through. And I just think it's a way to open it up and give people a greater opportunity. Not that there have been a lot over the years when you look at the list of charter revisions, and it's something that we have to be delicate about. But I think there's some things that we definitely know we need to fix, and I just felt like a repository might make sense.
Appreciate that. Ms. Darby, can you speak to some of the kind of, technical kind of housekeeping type stuff from just an omnibus housekeeping standpoint. I mean, I know we did, Mr. Rosenberg and myself did a, you know, every pronoun in that charter was he, the whole dang thing. You know, the mayor, he, you know, the fire chief, he, you know. So we've done one of those sort of kind of comprehensive type updates. I've even found subsequent to that, we missed one. Some of the technical things like you're mentioning. Can you speak to kind of who at legal or anyone kind of does that ever?
So, well, I think what you're talking about for a repository, you know, we have the council resources page, we have a folder for Charter Revision Committee, and we could easily create a subfolder in there that is like, you know, idea bank or something.
Council Connect page.
Or there could be a Council Connect page where you guys pop in your ideas there, and then we, you know, convene them at a subsequent meeting of the committee. There is also a list in that folder currently of all of the charter amendments from years past that the clerk compiled several years ago that I think is very helpful to see what types of charter amendments we've done in the past. It does not include the 2022 amendments because it has not been updated since then. But those amendments are in the folder as well. So, but as far as someone who regularly reviews the charter to see what types of updates can occur in that is, I think, under the purview of the Charter Revision Committee or, you know, any department that runs across something that they find needs a little change. And usually it's when something happens that you realize that the charter didn't address this and maybe we need the charter to address it.
Well, and I appreciate, I think, during my chairmanship, the clerk had already kind of compiled, we went back, we pulled all that together, so that kind of lives somewhere. So we do need, though, then to update from 2022, what was successful, what did we effectuate, and then we also do have a running list of anything and everything that has ever been proposed, whether it was successful or not. We did do an open call in 2022 to members, and kind of part of our process was sort of distilling that down, but those still live there, right? And so having sort of a, you know, running document of things that have been sort of proposed or suggested, then I think there's somewhat of an awkwardness in just like all the random housekeeping, kind of like, I found this one, you know, I think that maybe needs to live more like with staff, right? Like maybe if you
And
have
I will say too, if anybody sends us a charter amendment suggestion, it hasn't happened in a while, but you know, there were, you know, especially last term, I remember we would just get like one-off requests, and we have a spreadsheet that we will put them into.
Right, I appreciate that. Okay, thank you, Chair. Chair Bradford.
I didn't put it in my report because this is, in my opinion, trivial, but I wanted to follow up with Hannah. We had discussed a while back about getting gavels for the individual committee rooms. Has that moved anywhere?
No, I don't think that I have any progress to report, I'm sorry.
And I apologize, what was it?
Gavels?
Gavels for the committee rooms.
Oh, okay.
Now I know what I'm getting you for Christmas.
I even showed Hannah, you know, with Amazon Prime Day.
I was gonna say, that we should've got them on Friday.
Okay, Chair Sepulveda.
I think some of our chairmanships have expanded in scope from what they have traditionally been in the past. I know for Rules Committee, for last term, it was very straightforward and that was it. There is so much that the chair has to do now.
Yes, yeah.
And I guess my draft, there's some stuff that I forgot to add, and I'm now thinking, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to add this. But I think one of my main concerns mainly is the working group that's working on the board and commissions. Like, I included a timeline and the scope of work in mine, and I don't know what the intent is as far as membership on that working group. Is it the chair of the committee? Is it just me? And figuring out what it is and what the intent is, because I would need to walk the new chair through all of that, which is it's big in nature. And so if that's the case, then I just need to make sure to attach all of those documents onto my memo so they have them.
I appreciate that, and I think, as we are trying to achieve that continuity, right? And so you are in that working group now in your capacity as chair, but I think if you were not to be chair, like continuity would be important. I think it would be important for you to continue in that working group. And so I know there is somewhat of an awkwardness, colleagues, in, you're kind of writing this, not knowing, will you be sustained through your chairmanship, but part of this is sort of informing, moving to those decisions, and I think, we have reduced our number of committees. We have added, as Chair Porterfield's report shows, some working groups under those umbrellas. Mr. Parker's draft report proposes something that I had done under my Public Works chairmanship, but like a subcommittee that is just for solid waste, right? Because that's this whole other area, and the landfill maxing out and so forth. So though consolidating committees, wanting to create more leadership opportunities through some of the working groups, but also recognizing there is real need sometimes to sustain someone in chairmanship for those continuity reasons. But I know, I've not been hard or fast about that, right? Vice Mayor Briley was like, every chairmanship is 2 years. My predecessor, every chairmanship is 1 year. I do really want to kind of base it on the work that is in progress, and that's why I appreciate these draft memos helping me inform that. And we also have to build the bench, right? Because we've consolidated the number of committees. You all are in your chairmanship based on your previous work and being former members of this body. I thought that continuity was important from the first term to the next term. But we've got to lift up some of our newer members and move them into leadership as well. And I'm trying to kind of strike the balance there. So, if it occurs to you between now and your final draft, or, you and I, you can email Elise and we can set up a call to kind of suss out the nuance on that. But I absolutely will. I'm going to be making these decisions by, is that August 21st? Yes, yeah. Because of the cadence of legislation and signing on sponsors and so forth. So that's coming up pretty fast.
It's good to know as far as that working group, because our rules committee runs so long sometimes. It was fully my intention to, and I guess this is what I'll share with the group, it was my intention to share an update as far as what the working group is working on and like where we are in the timeline and the process. But we're running up against like announcement, and sometimes we go past announcements and it's almost time. And so
that is in our rules. I can recognize you for a special report from the work of a committee or a working group.
So it's important because I was trying to figure out, well, if it's a crunch time sort of thing, then maybe I could write it up in a blog post or have it emailed to the entire body if our time is limited in that capacity. But I want to be as transparent as possible. And so it was also my suggestion in my memo, if there is a transition for the working group as well, to make sure that that is something that the new person would consider. So
I appreciate that. I consider the work of the working group is in progress, and I don't think it would be wise, even if the chairmanship were to change, for your participation in that working group to change. I think you should be sustained, and I'll go ahead and just put that out there now.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the way that I see that working group is that it's not like a board or commission that is there forever and you need a member of a committee to represent. This is a task force, and I think the person on it should see it through. That's where I will.
That's absolutely, the working group has, specific goals, a finite time frame, it's stood up for a specific purpose. And while it might be under the umbrella of a larger committee, and there's a logic sometimes that person is the chair, as we make these changes, again, the goal is good work and continuity, right? So.
Question.
Yes.
So you will be making your decision by August 21st, so the new term actually starts September. So the new chairs will be effective the first meeting in September.
Effective the first meeting in September, yes. That's correct. Anyone, Chair Evans, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess one of the things that I included in my memo information is really around the Director of Health search, because I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that we're responsible for voting on in the fall. And so, and I've taken kind of a different approach than in the other two searches. We only had one search at the beginning of last term, but this will be our third director in 5 years. And so that's a lot of change, and especially in conjunction with the committee work as well, getting into all the layers of health and everything that we're putting on health. And so that is a huge thing. And so I'll be doing a resolution about what we're looking for in our next Director of Health. I went to the Board of Health meeting last week, spoke during public comment, have spoken to the board chair, had other community members come and speak at public comment, not to usurp anybody's will or authority as part of their process, but just to let everybody know that we've been through this vote 2 other times, and we're going to be dealing with it again, and we really need to make sure that we're getting a good candidate in the end, kind of incorporating these other things. So just wanted to highlight that. And then also piggybacking on your Chair Gamble's comment about trust, I kind of feel like it feels like an overarching issue to me. The trust side, but then also the strategic use of delay when it comes to some of our activities on the council and how they're implemented beyond what the legislation says. And so that's kind of been on my mind, in particular because of a comment I saw from Councilmember Horton. But it just reminded me of all of these examples that we see. And I don't know how legislatively you can solve it. I don't know what the remedy is. But at the same time, it's one of those things that I can think of particular examples where either I want to give people the benefit of the doubt and think that it's because maybe they weren't fully engaged or weren't really sure what the ramifications would look like. But at the same time, I know sometimes it's strategic, and so I don't know how we respond to that or overcome it.
And so are you speaking to members deferring legislation or department?
I would say probably more department level use of their strategic implementation of actions. And so thinking about your work with the budget, and it's kind of you included some pretty cool new processes, things, allocations, making sure that comes to fruition because the will of the body wants it, and so how do we think ahead to some of those things, as we're. And so that's just a general comment, not specific to the committee that I'm on, but I've just seen examples of it in the committee that I'm on, in particular to some of the tensions, between departments, that are represented. And so, anyway, just some random thoughts that I don't know what to do with necessarily, but it's happening a lot in our government.
And I appreciate that too, because I know those of us who were, running for office, to your point about, multiple directors of the health department, multiple directors of NDOT. I saw a lot of my policy work was in that space, or, where you're okay, well, we asked for this report, but then we did that thing, and then we got a new director, but then this changed, right? And so, in your chairmanship, you're often, or as a policy, I talk about holding through lines, right? Oh, remember 2 directors back, that legislation asked for this thing, and we never got that report. That is, from an institutional memory perspective, I want those things effectuated into these memos so that we do not lose track of that. So, if you think there is something that by committee action or request or legislation should have been delivered, that needs to be in your memo, right? So that your successor will know that. It will be in my awareness. I can circle around with staff. What are some things that are maybe, whether strategic delay or just really somebody forgot, because it changed, and maybe internal to the department, they didn't have a transition memo when a new person came in and they didn't know they needed to deliver the report or something like that. So go ahead, Chair Bradford.
Just a question, and I want to ask it and get everybody's feedback. Feel free to say it's a stupid idea, but going back to the budget and being as a chair, would you find it helpful as we go into the budget process if the departments your committee oversees sent you like, here's what they asked the mayors for? So that when we come around to doing our amendments, we can say, well, all right, here's what Metro Animal Care Control asked for, this is what codes asked for. So, as we're looking at, well, if I'm going to file an amendment to the budget for codes, I kind of already know what they've asked for, and I can look in the budget, see what they got. Is that something that would be beneficial as a chair as we go into budget season?
We have that though.
Yeah, I will put it right to Ms. Porterfield pretty fast, but I think, Ms. Porterfield and I talked about, in budget hearings, right? So the departments that are under the purview of the committees that you chair, right? Chair Porterfield was very intentional about first acknowledging the chair, for any questions, level setting, whatever, let members ask all the questions, and then acknowledging the chair again at the end, right? So you're kind of coming to that hearing, potentially with some background knowledge or things you remember from the past or something that you've elevated that you don't see funded. I think we've all found over the years that sometimes department directors are sort of in awkward positions, right? Because, what's been funded in the mayor's budget or not. And so I do think, we want everybody to be transparent, but we also want to be mindful of not putting sometimes directors in the awkward position of, it's a fair ask, but I think the way that it's administered kind of depends somewhat on the budget chair. Chair Porterfield, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I think that that could put the process in a little bit of a disarray. I think that the most effective way is when people are coming to like those budget hearings and to Vice Mayor's point, when we had a budget hearing. So for example, if the budget hearing was for police or fire, then Chair Evans was like offered the opportunity to sit up front with me if she chose to at the dais, if not, making sure that she was being acknowledged. But going through that process, like especially this year, like we structured the process in a way to try to make it like as transparent, as accessible to people as possible. And making sure that when we went through those budget work sessions, like that everyone was able to be acknowledged. I think what I have found out now from being budget chair that I did not realize prior to I was budget chair, amendments really throw things into a disarray. And like the best way to get something in is to like work through that process of like putting it in your wish list, coming to those work sessions, advocating for it, because now we have like 20 people that have heard the argument of why we need your thing, and it's easy to get your thing in there. When we get those amendments kind of late in the process, many times what I have seen is that we think like, oh, we're going to take money from this to this. It's not going to hurt anything. And in actuality, that wasn't the money that you thought it was. And now it's thrown Director Darby and Hannah in a, not a tizzy, but like it has disrupted.
Nobody's tizzying over there.
No, it has disrupted. I'm saying it has disrupted your whole day, because now you are having to like call and like barter with departments and like. And I know we all do it from a good place, because like we may not have thought of something and now here it is, and I'm gonna do this amendment because I have this very just thing that I want to do, but it really does like disrupt the budgeting process. So if a chair wants something in the budget, I would strongly recommend like working with the department that is under your purview, coming to that budget hearing, and then working through the outline process.
And if I may, before I go to Pro Tem, when I was first in service, and Ms. Weiner may remember, I mean, like, the chair had the thing, and then it was like, and the budget was filed. Like, there was no amending, there was no talking, there was no asking. The chair didn't even ask. There were no work sessions, there was no nothing, like, literally nothing. I was like, so is that, that's how we do so the evolution has been really significant, and, kind of fits and starts of, yeah, I am much more mindful of how those amendments late breaking can have really unintended kind of consequences and knock-on effects. So I think, being through the process of the hearings, in conference with, through appropriately the department or chair and a public notice, whatever. But like, if you think something wasn't elevated through the hearing or needs follow-up or, deserves an amendment for the awareness of the chair, like making sure that it happens on the front end, it still absolutely reflects, your work, your knowledge, the research that you did, but, the late breaking, I think, is really problematic.
And I think
I
too,
want to,
No, go ahead.
So what I wanted to add is that for the committee chairs and everybody is that the information that you're referencing, we actually do have. Every department has a folder where they actually put what they gave the mayor. Yeah. And in the notes, the questionnaire, it talks about this is what we asked for, but this is what the mayor funded. So you have that information. So when I go through the budget meetings, I look at all of those. That's how I can then say, you asked the mayor for X, but he did not give you what does that stand for. So we have that information already, and I think we just have to know where to go look for them and make sure that if there's something that they ask for that you think they really need, to make that part of the budget conversation, so that when we're asking questions in budget committee and going through the budget process, that's included. So I think that would be my recommendation. But to add to what Councilmember Evans says, is that what I think committee chair or new committee chair can also do differently, which is something that I did as an education chair, is that if there is a specific ask or there is something that is funded in the budget that a department came for, and you're very interested in the implementation, then you ask them after the budget. So the school board came and asked us for money because the funding was low with the state, and we have to scramble to give them 7 million. And so that 7 million, it was very important to me as the new education chair to say, what are you guys doing to make sure that this situation does not happen again? We funded 1 million for community projects for languages for people in the schools. And that was one of my questions when we gave you the $1 million. How much have you spent? What are you doing with it? So I would recommend that the budget process, to me, is not April to June. Mm-hmm. It's a continuous thing. And so if there's something that matters, you walk through it through the budget period, but you also follow up after that. So just want to put that out there.
Well, and I think too, as it relates to the questionnaires, or to your point, that we might think about like the communication that we send to members. It's maybe the reminder communication. These are the hearings this evening, or these are the hearings tomorrow. Going ahead and doing a direct link into those associated questionnaires, depending on kind of where those live and how they're formatted, if that's
We do a link to
possible.
the folder. I don't know enough about SharePoint to know if we can link to the direct document, but
Yeah, I think that's something to consider, because I think sometimes when there's just the orders of magnitude, you don't necessarily know where to go, or if you go there, it's like page after page after page after page.
it's still page after page, but it's also one
Yeah.
But also
related to
too,
that
like sometimes
hearing.
members like, it's like, oh, Command F, right? Like, I mean, like literally sometimes folks don't know that, honestly, like to figure that out. Like, so just a little bit of that facilitating. Go ahead, Chair.
And thank you, Councilor Swear, I'm so glad you lifted that up. The teacher in me over explains everything, so I will say during the budget process, like I was also constantly like, okay, colleagues, we are on page, section F, page 25 of the budget book. You can find this budget hearing memo. Like I literally wrote myself a note to tell people where to find that, the document that she was talking about, the budget questionnaire, as well as where we were in the budget book. And so, I would hope that whoever gets the chairmanship or chairwomanship for budget going forward, that they will continue to do that, because I do think that it is helpful. Like, people are rushing in from after work. They have not lived with this the way that the budget chair has lived with this, so it's just easier to kind of guide people to it.
Yeah, and I think, again, just from a memo perspective, right, like how you administered this hearing or that, kind of sharing that. Okay, we are over time. Chair Sepulveda, go
I
ahead.
think we should also encourage our colleagues to attend these work sessions, because not enough of us did, and I know that some of the first termers are going through this for the first time, and I don't know if there's a place where it lives on the how-tos. I know we have the website, that breaks it down for the community as a whole. But if there were videos that we have done in the past, which I feel like we have, if they all lived in one place, so we could send that to the first termers.
We have done that, Chair. So when I came into service, like, the YouTube, I was like, I can't find anything anywhere. That was one of our first conversations we had with ITS and Mr. Durbin. Like, so there is a specific budget channel, and so we've tried to make that, and the work sessions are included there. I was not physically present at the work sessions. I did watch them all online. But yes, that we have sort of, and they have reorganized YouTube a little bit, because it used to be like, I think what it was an algorithm. So the committees that were watched the most often popped to the top, and they were not in a straight chronology. And so when you were trying to go find that most recent meeting, it was inordinately difficult. And they have addressed that. And we did also specifically ask, and they stood up a budget-specific kind of, they call it a channel or what?
Playlist.
Playlist or, yeah.
Playlist.
Yes. All right, with that, if you have not yet gotten me your draft memo, or you want to have any revisions, if you want to have a call or a conversation with me, please do reach out to Elise to schedule that. And I really appreciate everybody's service. This was a big and busy year, and the first year can always be pretty challenging, so I am very grateful to you all for taking on this extra level of leadership, and just want to express that thanks. Yes, Chair Porterfield.
Thank you. Super productive meeting. Real quick, when does co.admin@nashville.gov go into effect?
So we're doing the final testing of it, and hopefully by Friday everything's good to go. The back of house is all set up. I just want ITS to double check everything, make sure everything's good to go. Like absolutely.
We're not gonna.
Because I got to bounce back, so it's not working yet for us. So that's why I was wondering. I already used it.
Initially, the email was longer. We had council requests at nashville.gov. We wanted to make sure we sort of shortened it and had the word admin in it to make the distinction with the legal services. So we sort of refined the email just in the last few days. But I am going to, members, be sending an email to the entire council body. So a lot of the things that we discussed here today, the associated links, the explanations, the new administrative email, the link out to the libraries, the link to the Canto, that will be in an email that goes out to all of council, targeted for Friday. But if we don't have all our T's crossed and I dotted, we might move it into the next week. But the goal is to get it out Friday. Okay, all right, thank you all.
Good job.
Okay.
Thank you.